What is up, everybody? What is going on? Welcome to a brand new episode of VR Roundtable. VR Roundtable on VR365. That's kind of what we're doing today. It's actually what I would call an impromptu idea. We've all been playing Half-Life Alyx, and I thought, man, let me see if Gary's been playing Half-Life Alyx. Let me see if Steve's been playing it. And they both have, and I got them both in the building. Unfortunately, we do not have Chris. I did talk to Chris, but he doesn't have any of his webcam stuff, his microphone, and no VR. He's like locked out of his college situation and was unable to do it. But he really did want to show up and would like to be on a future VR Roundtable reunion. So maybe we'll have to do that at some point. Maybe when there's like a really big major hardware announcement or something comes out of the blue, we'll look into that. But right now I've got Steve and I've got Gary, and we're going to go ahead and talk about some Half-Life Alyx. We're going to talk about Oculus Del Mar a little bit, and we might talk about this HP Reverb G2. Might be a little bit of excitement there, and then anything else that anybody else wants to bring up. It's kind of a freestyle show, but why don't we start it off with Gary, because man, this whole worldwide economy is some real stuff right now, and Gary is like living it on the front lines. Gary, what's going on, dude?
It's okay. You know, they're affected, aren't they? Everyone's in the boat, really, and we're all sort of struggling through this time at the moment with, you know, just the disruption being caused and that kind of stuff. But you can't forget to lose sight of the fact that it's really serious and people are dying, that kind of stuff. I posted something on Twitter last week where it was really about how, you know, I'm self-employed. It's difficult when being forbidden work, you've got a family to support. What position does that leave me in? And without losing sight of the fact that serious people, and they are, you know, they are dying around the world with this thing, my priority at certain times has to be, you know, I've got to put food on the table. So I put something on Twitter about that last week, and it's difficult. It is difficult at the moment for everybody. So I don't like really putting things on Twitter for like personal things like that, and political things. I don't really use Twitter for that. So I sort of almost regret putting some Twitter to say those things, but I won't make a habit of it in future. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough at the moment. It is tough, and we just want to sort of see our way through it, really, and hopefully, you know, in 6 months' time, we can start to return to normal life. It's really, really difficult at the moment, and financially, things are going to be difficult for myself and a lot of other people as well. I didn't prepare anything because I don't want to talk about this. It's sort of a little bit depressing, honestly. But yeah, we'll get through it. You know, we always get through these things, and we'll manage it at some point.
Real quick question though about that is like, do you feel like when everything does return to normal, does your old job come back, or do you have to like recreate your old job?
No. Basically, my job will be there. It's the same. Things return to normal. The reason I've not got any work is because customers have not got any work. Because just these repercussions that are happening. And my job, I can't work from home. I can't do my job from home. I have to go out, and we can't go out. We've been told we can't go out, so I have to stay in, and for good reason. I understand the reasons we have to stay in. So look, last week as well, our government did provide some support for self-employed people. So I'm not in as bad a situation as first I thought I was, and a lot of people are in really much worse situations than I am too. So I'm probably one of the more fortunate ones. So I don't want to sort of rattle on about how you know, I'm really struggling. I'm not going to be able to manage or anything like that, because I think I probably am going to be fine. But it's just difficult times for everyone. It really is at the moment.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think one of the things that this thing is going to show everybody is like, it is a good idea to like put money in savings for a potential emergency, because I think this shows how real that is. And if we think about all the different possible disasters that could happen, this is almost kind of a mild disaster, but look at the reverberations it's causing through everything. And so, yeah, I mean, the one thing I've learned about all this is you really do have to have a lot of money almost set aside. And most people, we all tend to live paycheck to paycheck, man. It's hard because you're bombarded with advertisements to buy, spend that money right away, you know. But yeah, it's a hard thing.
I was just going to say, I think, am I breaking up a little bit? People are saying that I'm breaking up. My audio
No,
is so.
you're not breaking up for us. I think, Anthony, you might want to not share your screen that you're sharing with me and Gary, and maybe that'll help give some of your upload bandwidth to the stream. All right. And yes, people in chat, I do monitor chat, but I don't have a Twitch account, so I can't type in there. I can't respond to you all there.
Hello. Okay, yeah. It's sounding fine for me. I guess we're just going to have to try to do this the best that we can, and we'll figure it out later. I know there is some audio problems that's going on right now. I mean, Steve was breaking up a little bit and stuff like that, but as long as we can hear each other, I think it'll be okay. But
yep.
Okay, so anyway, let's go ahead and go back here. So let's go to Steve and check in with Steve now. So I got Steve as guest one. Steve, so, I mean, obviously we got the situation going on that's going on, but then also we haven't talked to you in a long time. Just curious, what has been your gaming habits and stuff? Just kind of what have you been doing with, like, any free time, or is there such a thing as free time? Has all that free time gotten swallowed up by family stuff mostly?
No, I mean, I've done around the house. I played a lot of Dangerous, and I had some flat games that I missed on. So this past December, when The Witcher came to Netflix, we watched it, and I kind of got into that world and played Witcher 3 because I'd never played before. And I bounced at some flat, but in terms of VR, you know, I touched on some time here and there, but it was mostly Dangerous till this week, Alyx, and I've been all play Sinners and Saints, and that didn't tickle my fancy too much, and Stormland, which surprisingly didn't tickle my fancy very well either. But I like Alyx, and I know we're going to talk about that. So the past week I played a lot of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, it's choppy. People are talking about it in chat. Everyone cutting out. Yeah, I think it's just. Man, you know what I'll do? Actually, Gary and Steve, you guys can wrap for just a second. I'm just going to try to double check with the other people in this house and see if I can get them off of some things. I'll be right back. Just one sec.
Okay. Well, he left it on the big window of me. That's awesome.
So, there you go. So, Steve.
So, wrap. Gary, what have you been playing when you have been doing VR stuff? You know, before Alyx, like let's save Alyx to the side because we're going to talk about Alyx. But what else have you been playing? Have you gotten into Stormland or Sinners and Saints or anything else?
Mainly. So I was out of the loop with Stormland and Asgard's Wrath, and a lot of that I didn't have the VR set up for. And that. Both of those games came out in a period where I wasn't playing a lot of VR, and so I've really not played much of Asgard's or Stormland, which is a bit of a shame because I've watched a lot of videos about them, and I know like people in the community are really really enthusiastic about both of those games, but I've not really got into either of those really, and Alyx is the priority at the moment, but I'm going to go back to all of these ones that I've missed. I can't wait to do that.
Hey, did either of you guys, I don't know if you just talked about this, but probably not, but either of you guys ever get into Westworld Awakening, like into Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 and all that?
No, I've still not played that. I need to. I heard it another podcast. There was another podcast that were talking about that the other day, actually, and it reminded me of it. Because I know you are always talking about that.
It's unbelievable how nobody knows how good that is, because it's like, it really is. Oh, what about this? Have either of you guys played Paper Beast at all for PlayStation VR?
I moved my PlayStation, and I don't even have the PSVR connected currently, so I can't play Paper Beast.
I downloaded it yesterday, and I've got plans to play it with. Is it the kind of thing that kids would enjoy, Anthony? Do you think they'd enjoy it, or
How old?
say 11 years old? My son's 11 years old, so
Probably. It's just it's a slow burn kind of a thing. Like in the very beginning, like I thought this is kind of a dud, but then it was like one of these things where I was like, oh my god, this is not a dud. This is really, really good. I think it's actually really pretty freaking awesome. But the problem is you don't really discover that so much until you're further in the game. Although a lot of reviews are saying it's crazy short. For me, it seemed like it was going a long time, but I was taking lots of breaks. But I had different puzzles where I'd be stuck on the puzzle and I'm like, man, I can't figure this puzzle out. And then maybe the next day I went back into the game and then boom, the puzzle made sense, which is something I find happens a lot with various puzzle games.
do you notice, just quickly, notice like going back to the PSVR, because I've not gone back into the PSVR for a long time, like a really long time, and I wonder if like playing things like Alyx in particular, for example, on the Index, where it looks so great in that headset and these high resolution headsets, going back to the PSVR, does it dampen the experience at all for you, or is that like silly to even bring that up?
No,
Maybe
it's a good point. And also, like, I recently had that discussion with Doc OK, Oliver Kralos, and he loves PlayStation VR. Like, he loves the optics of it. He says they basically eliminated screen door. He likes the glass type of lenses, the heavier lenses that they use in it.
What I've been saying for years.
And but you know what, going back to it, man, there is a Vaseline reality on almost on the entire PlayStation VR catalog. But I think certain games, like the edges of things are just shimmering a lot, and just raw resolution, man. Raw resolution is just, I mean, there's a singular screen in there that you're sharing with both of your eyes, and the resolution is just only so much.
Well, I think, I don't know if Sony ever said it, but it looks a lot like the Samsung Odyssey Plus in terms of that softness. I mean, the Odyssey Plus and the PSVR look a lot alike. And I believe that Sony was really focused. If you go back to some of the things they were saying when they launched the PSVR, they were really focused on SDE. One of the things they were touting was the fact that they had an OLED RGB panel layout, but I think they also put some sort of a grid or whatever to minimize the SDE impact. And I think their solution was very similar to what Samsung did at the Odyssey Plus, because the look, and I'm talking about raw resolution, just the kind of look, that layer of film kind of look that it has to it, it's just there. But
yeah, I mean, all the headsets we have, they all have their issues, right? I mean, it'll be no compromises. We'll see about that, right, for this Reverb G2. We can talk about that a little bit later. But why don't we start off? And so I did want to mention real quick, guys, Steve's Skype, what happens with that is resolution. So it's like the Skype resolution sometimes like gets screwy and it'll bounce around. And I could change the size.
Fix that, by the way, so it won't bounce around. I can fix that for you.
Oh, really?
Again. Okay. But anyways, offline. Yep.
God, too bad, yeah. But I'm going to throw on some a little Half-Life Alyx in the background. This is whoops, just a second here. Okay, this is actually like some footage from Chapter 1. So if somebody here has never ever seen Chapter 1 and you would be absolutely devastated by possibly seeing a spoiler, I am warning you about that. But this is like somebody just playing the game from scratch, and I thought it could just be cool to have it on in the background as we kind of discuss Half-Life Alyx. And so one of the things I'll say real quick is I am currently at Chapter 4 of the game. Gary, I'm not sure if you're at Chapter 5 or if you got beyond that.
Yeah, I've just started. I'm a little way through Chapter 6 now. Just did a little bit more today.
Okay, and Steve has basically put the game to bed. So Steve has been all the way through it. Steve, real quick, just about the length of the game overall. If you had to, I know Steam gives its tally for how long you've played in the game. I don't know how accurate that totally is, but how many hours did you think you popped in Half-Life Alyx?
Somewhere between 10 and 11. Steam's now saying 11 for me because I went back in and played around with a few things, but I think it said 10 when I beat it. So I've heard some people take as long as 14. I think some people, if they rush through, can do it in 7, 8. But for me, 10, and I don't feel like I rushed through it, and I think that's a pretty good talking point when really trying to understand how long it is. I'm not really the speedrunner type, but I'm also not the stop all the flowers either. Like I don't, if something's interesting, I'll stop and look around it. If I have something creative in my mind, a way to take down an enemy or to play, I'll do it. But I don't try to drag a game out. So I think 10 hours pretty fair. Of course I didn't pay for the game because I got it with my index when I had the index, and I still have my index controller. So I got the game free, like probably most of the people watching this, probably got it free. And had I paid $60 for it, I'd be okay with it because the 10 hours was a really good 10 hours.
Okay, wait. See this playthrough right here? So as you were talking, I'm watching this playthrough, and you know that where you start off on that terrace, you start off on that little terrace overlooking that city. I was there for like 10 minutes. This guy was there for like a minute and a half. I'm seriously, I was there for like 10 minutes just looking over the balcony and then like taking the chair that was there and picking it up and being like, wow, the physics are actually pretty good on some of this stuff. I will have some complaints about the physics though, but
no, I think that is, I did the same thing. Like I don't know if I spent 10 minutes on the balcony, but I stayed in that area because I was looking out over City 17, and then I think that's where the what they call them, a stalker or a strider or whatever, one of those big spidery mechanical looking things, that comes by when you're right there, and I spent a lot of time on that. And then I don't consider it a spoiler, but 2 minutes later when you go in the first room and you can draw on the window, like I was writing on the window, playing with the interaction a little bit. So in that, I think they sort of drive the game that way. Like in the very beginning, it's your opportunity to get introduced to the world, to get introduced to the really good graphics and the fidelity, and just kind of just get used to your hands a little bit. And so most people spend time there. You're showing, I see on the screen now, someone drawing.
Yeah, apologies for that,
yes,
guys.
I drew on that window. I did not draw a penis.
I didn't draw anything. I didn't even know you could do that. Hey, so Gary, I did have a question for you. Like just on the beginning of Half-Life Alyx, and this cord keeps catching on my foot. Okay, in the beginning part of Half-Life Alyx, like kind of your first experience with it, when you took the headset off that very first time after playing it, were you like, man, this has achieved everything I've ever wanted it to ever achieve? Or was there a part of you kind of like, I don't know, there's some disappointments here?
There was no disappointment at all. I think Valve really wanted to impress with those first few rooms. They wanted to impress and set you off in the right frame of mind into this game, because it is a real impressive opening. Yeah, and the interaction. So when you've got this balcony area, and then you've got that room where you can draw on the window. You've got multiple interaction things that you can do. Right, you've got a can. And with the controllers, you can, I guess, with the Oculus touch controllers as well, you can crush the can using varying amounts of the analog grip function on both controllers. And I've not really seen that. Maybe it's in another game, I'm not sure, but I've not seen it done in that way where you've got a direct analog of how much the can is crushed. And you've just got little things to play with in that first area as well. So I think, it's an introduction to the game, but an impressive one. And so I didn't want to leave it. I was there like you, Anthony. I was there about 10 minutes, at least 10 minutes. I didn't want to go down that stairwell to the next area. I wanted to just stay there and see what I could find. I thought it was a great opening. With regards, this might be difficult, just to let everybody know my thoughts on this. I'm on chapter 6, and I'm going to really do my best to not do any spoilers or anything like that in this game. But so if I edge towards that direction, feel free to call me up on it, Anthony or Steve, because I don't want to get taken away with this game at all.
I mean, it's going to be hard to talk about this game and not like have some minor-ish spoilers. So I think but people that, like, if you're watching everybody's videos out there, you're getting spoilers, and a lot of people are doing that. So if you really want to get away from Half-Life Alyx and not have a spoiler, maybe you shouldn't be listening to a podcast or at least this section when we're talking about this. Skip it to where we're talking Del Mar or something else maybe later. But yeah, it's funny. When I first started this game, my opinion on the game kind of bounced around a little bit, but I guess because so the door, here's a door right there. Did you see how when that door opened, it went zzz, and then it just locked into place? That actually really bothered me early in this game. I know it's just a super minor nitpicking thing, but it's like every gate and every door that I interacted with. See, in Boneworks, I'm going to go to Boneworks, and I know a lot of people think Boneworks is garbage and all this. But in Boneworks, when you're holding a door with your finger, when you're holding a door open with your fingers, you could barely tap the door and the door moves just a little bit and it comes back, and you hit it a little bit harder and the door moves more and it comes back, and you can push the door and then it goes a little ways and then it slowly swings back and it'll kind of almost smack you. That will never happen in this game. In this game, what happens is when you push the door, once you push it a certain percentage, it automatically takes over and the door says, thank you very much. I'll take over all of your force now and I will lock your door in place so there's no jank, which is cool from a jank standpoint. But for me, as somebody that just came off Boneworks, I got to say that I was like, oh man, this just killed my immersion.
So, hold on. You have a door right there behind you. I would like for you, while on camera, live in front of everybody, walk over to that door, and I want to sing it swing both ways, saloon style.
I get what you mean, Anthony. Actually, I'm on with that one particular point. I do agree, because if you want to go up to a door and just sort of edge it open slightly without holding the handle, because you can do it if you hold the handle, of course, you can hold the handle and move it however much you want. But if you want to just sort of edge it open slightly just by pushing it, you can't really do that in this game, which
yes,
is
you can.
You can do it a little bit. You can do it for like
a little.
Without getting into spoilers, you will have to later in the game.
Is it?
That's how I know you can do it. You have to.
Well, maybe that one particular door, but I've tried like really gently pushing a door, and it will still sort of go quite far further than you expect it to, I think. But
it goes into an automatic thing. Like after about 9 or 10 inches, it like just goes into like an automatic thing. That's enough. Thanks. I'll take over now.
And maybe like there you can, and I think you said it there, after 9 or 10 inches, it'll kind of walk its way, rest the way open. But for that 9 to 10 inches, maybe it's 2 feet, whatever it is, I don't know. You can gently, and I got used to that. Like, so I don't like a door that physics swig out and it bounces around like it's made out of Jello or something. Like, I have no issues with the door in this game, and I think initially you kind of got to get used to the physics of a world. And I played both for 15 minutes, like, and I kind of knew I wasn't going to like Boneworks, so focused on physical interaction and basically nothing else. And that's just not my cup of tea. But so I'm not as familiar or as attuned to the Boneworks doors as you are, but the doors in Alyx did not bother me at all. And the physics, it's not perfect, right? It doesn't feel one-to-one like opening a door in real life. But then again, other than shooting a gun, there's so much in VR that never feels perfectly one-to-one. Like, picking up a glass bottle, like doing that in Alyx doesn't feel the same way as me holding this beer bottle right now. So I think we have to accept the limits of the technology to a degree and not focus on it.
Yeah, in chat, VR Gamer Life is saying, he's saying being pedantic regarding door physics. And yeah, look, it's a super tiny little nitpick. It's like, really? Are you really going to let the way the doors behave bother you? I mean, that's such a... But there's some other things about this game. So why don't I'll be the negative Nancy guy, and you guys can tell me why I'm wrong. Look, no question about it, this is probably the best VR game ever. Like at first, I was bouncing back and forth to, is this a guaranteed top 3 VR game, or is this absolutely the best VR game ever? No questions asked. And there was a little bit of a debate for me, but now I'm in chapter 4, and I can say absolutely this is probably, I mean, like 99.9% the best VR game ever. So anything negative I have to say about it is just nitpicking. But, you know, we're talking about a game that was placed on such a high pedestal, and we're expecting this to save VR and be the killer app. And this is Mount Gaben, you know, it came down from Mount Gaben and all these things. And so expectations are incredibly high. One thing I noticed in some of my early playing of this game is it reminded me of Doom from the standpoint, if you think about Doom gameplay going all the way back, you're going through these hallways. Hold on a second.
Okay, sorry, my phone's doing one of those emergency alerts. Look, Kentucky's going into a stay-home order.
Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. Breaking news. Tornadoes are arriving. Okay, so what was I saying here? No,
Doom.
what? Yeah, oh, Doom. Yeah, Doom. So in Doom, you're running through these hallways. You're looking through all these hallways, all these rooms. You get a key. You open the door. Running through all these hallways. You get a key. You open the door. Now, I'm not going to say Half-Life Alyx is that, but there are a lot of these little things that you tend to do over and over. You're opening this thing on the wall. You got to grab this shaped object, this battery that just happens to be located within one room of where you are every time, but you're going to have to, it's just, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, for some reason I thought that Valve, being as great as they are, would take it beyond that, where like for example, if you're getting your gun upgraded, why couldn't it be that you meet somebody, it's in the story, and he upgrades your gun, and it's like a freaking it's like a cutscene thing with like high detail and stuff, but maybe you're interacting with it a little bit, and then later on in the game you meet somebody else that gives you a different kind of an upgrade, or you kill somebody and they've got a gun and you're with somebody and they're like, there's that gun, that's the like, why not build these upgrades into the story instead of having these automatic little things on the wall? Oh, that thing is the blank thing, and that thing is the blank thing. Am I being way too picky about it? Okay, who wanted to tackle that first? Gary?
Well,
No, go ahead, Gary.
Well, just quickly, I think, first of all, there's a couple of things to say, because far from this thing where they're repeating, you know, the corridors and you're doing the same thing a little bit to a certain extent. It's a game at the end of the day. So, of course, you know, these things happen in games. But if they stray too far from that, a criticism that they could leave themselves open to is possibly people at the end of it saying it didn't feel like a Half-Life game. People have an expectation of what a Half-Life game should be and what it should do. And I think they were, in some respects, my other point is I think they were playing it safe. Okay. And that plays into my first point, because I think in some respects they were playing it very safe by making it feel very much like a Half-Life game, adding the virtual reality element into it with the interaction, and expanding on the physics of a Half-Life game. They could have expanded it far more than they did. I agree, they could have done this, but I think when you look at it from their point of view, they were very, very nervous. You can tell from all the interviews that the developers have done on this. I think they were very apprehensive about how this was going to be received anyway. And they wanted it to just feel like a Half-Life game, play like a Half-Life game that people were used to. And that's why they've gone down this path. Hopefully, you know, if they do this again.
But hold on, because this is a fantastic point. Because I agree with what you said. And Anthony's already said it's probably the best VR game, right? Or a very, very highly ranked one. I'm going to ask you, is it the best VR game or one of the best VR games?
One of, for me. It's the best game of its type. If it's type, I believe it is the best game.
Yeah. So with that in mind, it's the best game of its type or the best VR game or one of the best VR games, even though they played it safe. See, I feel somewhat vindicated by Half-Life Alyx because I've always kind of had a somewhat negative approach to a degree about motion controls. I hate the over focus we tend to do in VR on motion controls. The idea that Skyrim or Fallout were bad games because you couldn't walk up and manipulate everything perfectly one to one, and I never felt that way. I kind of disagreed with that mentality to an effect. So seeing all the trailers with Half-Life Alyx over the past couple of months, they really focused on the interactivity in the trailers, and I really thought that was the direction they were going to go. But when you get in the game and you spend some time with it, you start to realize that, with the whole gravity gloves concept, that it's not they balanced gameplay and fun against the tedious. VR is great. VR can do a lot of really good things, but VR can also be tedious if all of your interactions and your fumbling with objects and the physics of the world don't work well. It can be very tedious and the opposite of fun. And I think Valve was striving for a balance. Like, we want this thing to be immersive, we want this to be interactive, but we don't want it to be a chore. We don't want to add friction to it and require someone to be in the right mood to play Half-Life Alyx. So I think they balance it incredibly well. I love the gravity gun or the gravity gloves and not having to walk to every object and pick it up. I mean, and that took so much of the chore out of the game. I think they struck a really good balance. That's not to say that, to Anthony's point, they could have, had some more creativity around the weapon upgrades. And I think in part they did that because part of the interactivity in the game is every locker or every weapon upgrade station you go to, you kind of go through that 3-dimensional hologram puzzle, and that kind of keeps in with the VR aspect. That was, it was almost like they were like, we're going to make sure that when someone wants to mod this game to flat, that they're not going to be able to. And those hologram puzzles were a surefire way to kind of knock that out. So.
Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned that. And, you do make a lot of great points there. It's just like the complaint is it's too it's like, will we ever get past the idea of it being video gamey? You got the health station, you got the weapon upgrades, you know what I mean? But like you said, yeah, if you were to make some weird convoluted thing out of all of that, then it's like it does become so it's a balancing act. I guess we'll just have to have different genres of games that want to pursue that, and then other genres that are like, no, this is a video game. You're just going to have to realize this is a video game. Gary, let me bring up a different point about Half-Life Alyx for you. What about the horror aspect of it? Because I can say, as far as I've been in this game, man, I have seen some parts of this game that I know there's got to be people out there that would love to play every minute of Half-Life Alyx, but they're simply not going to be able to do it. There is some pretty strong horror, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, there was on the Tested podcast, I don't know if anybody saw that, it was on YouTube where they're all sort of self-isolating at home. But Jeremy brought up this point as well, where he was of the opinion that it's too much focused on horror. And Chapter 3, I think, delves into horror. That's one of the scariest sections I've been through so far. But it's a complaint because Half-Life, to me, it's never really been... I've not played all the way through Half-Life 2, to be perfectly honest with you. And I know there is a horror element towards the middle of that game, or perhaps late half of that game. But Half-Life has never really been ultra horror, whereas certain sections of Half-Life Alyx really do focus on that. And you're in these really, really tight enclosed rooms where you've got a flashlight, which works incredibly well for creating an atmosphere in VR, where you're shining around this flashlight. And you can see these shadows and silhouettes of things that are lurking around. It works really well, but I've got to be honest, I sort of agree with Jeremy to a certain extent. I like VR horror. I've played through a lot of VR horror games, but I wasn't expecting it to be this horror focused in certain sections of Half-Life. But then again, I'm not the kind of person that will stop playing a game for that. I'm not going to stop playing Half-Life Alyx for that. I don't know if either of you guys would be.
I mean, it's like it's horror light right? Like even though it's dark and moody and environmental, it's not that scary, right? Like I think it's a horror-ish environment without any of the other horror elements. Like you're still pretty powerful with your guns. You can still kind of take down a lot of enemies. It's different than go to one of my favorite, Resident Evil 7, where like you can die really quickly, right? So I don't have a big problem with it. I think it does highlight the aspect that this game, and I think I heard one of the developer videos. I've not followed podcasts since we've been on quarantine because I'm home. My podcasts, I really take those in while commuting, and I'm not commuting now. But I do know I watched a video at some point where they talked about how the game was basically developed scenario to scenario. It's almost like they had different people and hey Bob, your job is to create scenario A, and hey Gary, your job is to create scenario B, and that's why each kind of room or area you go into almost feels like a sort of a micro escape the room game, with some shooter gunplay in it. And I think that's what they did for the pacing of the whole game is they took these scenarios and these sort of concepts of how you can move through a terrain, and then they stitched them all together in a Half-Life skin. And I think that, I guess, to answer your question, I think that's how the horror bred out, because some people working in some of those scenarios kind of gave it a horror slant, because you get in other parts of the game and it feels entirely different.
Yeah.
Fluke in chat says, let's see, where was he? He says, I'm too desensitized to it all these days. Alyx wasn't remotely a scary game, in my opinion. Dude, get the hell out of Dodge. Alyx is pretty damn scary. And you know what? Part of it is...
Fluke, I'm with you. I don't think it was that scary.
Okay, but I think part of the scary is what Gary was talking about. You're in the dark. You got this tiny little flashlight. And it's the noises. It's the 3D audio. So in the very beginning, when I was playing Half-Life Alyx, I was paying attention to the audio, and I was thinking, man, this is freaking Valve. This is all the money in the world. This is all the development resources in the world. Like, this should have the best 3D audio. It should have the best graphics. It should have the best physics, the best everything, right? At the very beginning, I wasn't that super impressed with the 3D audio. But as the game moved on, I started to get more and more impressed with the 3D audio, especially in the part where it is horror and it's in those dark environments. You're hearing things growl and make weird noises, and it activates that lizard part of your brain that is like, that really sounds like something up there about 12 feet that's going to eat the living crap out of me. And one complaint I do have, though, is the flashlight. Like, Gary, you were talking about the flashlight. Now, as far as I can tell, the flashlight only comes on when it wants to come on. Like, you can't turn on the flashlight or turn it off, and it only comes on in, like, certain areas. And to me, that was bogus, because it's like, you're basically saying, oh, here's a long, dark, and scary part. Let's turn the flashlight on. Like, give me an actual button that, because I was in certain dark little places, and I'm like, well, I actually want to turn my flashlight on and look in this little dark corner to see if I'm missing something. I mean, I guess they don't put anything in the dark.
There were parts, even as you approach towards the end of the game, where I wanted the flashlight to come on, and I distinctly remember thinking, why, like, looking at my hand, is there a way I can turn the flashlight on? Because I don't think they did a good job with that. I think they should have given, like, let it be automated, right, for the user to kind of keep it simple, but then also let you override that if you choose to. Like, you can double click the A button or one of the buttons on your left hand on the index controller and turn it off and on.
Yeah, another thing, just regarding the whole horror aspect of it, see, here's the weird thing, right? Okay, in the flat gaming world, think of all the video games we've ever played in the flat gaming world that we would not classify as a horror game, but it has like monsters and creatures in it. But we don't look at it as a horror game. For example, like Resistance, like the Resistance games that were on PlayStation. I don't know that I would classify that as a horror game. It's like a sci-fi shooter game. Or like Halo, or like, you wouldn't classify Halo as a horror game. Yet when you bring some of this stuff into VR, some of the monsters that are in those games, if you're in a dark hallway and if it does have great 3D audio, all of a sudden, bam, now you have an effing horror game. Like, I noticed that with Fallout 4 VR. I was playing Fallout 4 VR, and at certain points when you have those one zombies that are like banshee zombies that are out of control and they're coming at, it's a horror game right there, man. I think it's just a side effect of VR that if you're going to put monsters in a game that normally might not have been horror, well, now they're in the first person and now they're there and now they're real. So you're either going to have to cartoonify it, like maybe a Robo Recall type thing or something, but you're going to have to like,
yeah, I mean, it does take on a horror tone, but I will say that it doesn't carry through the whole game. It actually takes on several tones. Fluke is talking about Alien Isolation, and yes, like I would agree with him. Like, once you've done Alien Isolation and played through the whole game and gotten familiar there, horror, even in VR, kind of takes a different definition. So in terms of comparing it to Alien Isolation, and Alyx is a 2 on a scale of 10 in terms of horror. But if you take Alien Isolation out of the equation and you don't play those type of games, Alyx can be more tense and sort of in that horror-ish direction in certain segments.
That's what I was thinking as well, because I think main fan put something in chat earlier about what is scary, and a part of it, I think maybe it's not horror in Alyx that I'm thinking of. It's more just the constant feeling of being on edge in certain sections, not throughout the game. It's not like that constantly throughout the game, but in certain sections you are on edge, and you know when you're going through one of these dark tunnels and your flashlight pops on out of your control, you know that you're going to be having some jump scares and things like that in there. So that's part of it, and it edges. And I remember in that tested podcast I mentioned earlier, actually, Norm said that if you're not even got to the horror point yet, to Jeremy when he was talking about the chapter 3 sections. So yeah, people have mentioned that in the chat as well. So yeah, I might have spoken too soon about the horror portion of this game.
Yeah, I think there's some real horror action here, and it's just weird because it's such a mainstream game. And that's going to be a weird thing that developers are going to have to deal with in VR, especially as graphics get better, field of view gets wider. You know, these are going to be factors. One thing I did want to talk about, I think we all kind of have played some of the old Half-Life games in the past at some point, one or another time. And what do you guys think about like the graphics? Oh, Steve, so you're kind of new to the Half-Life world. Okay, but
so I watched the day Alyx came out, while we were waiting for it to open up on the Steam store. I went to YouTube and I watched a 20-ish minute video on the Half-Life timeline. And having beat Alyx, I will say I think it's worth, if you've never played Half-Life or you don't care, and I'm not the type. I'm not going to go back and play a 15-year-old game because it's going to look like a 15-year-old game, even when it's redone and attempt to be beautified and all that. But I think watching a timeline, like there were things, and choosing my words carefully so I don't spoil anything, but there were things at the end of Alyx that made me appreciate that I had watched that timeline and I understood what happened between Half-Life 2, and then episode 1 and 2. So I think it's worth doing that. So yes, I didn't mean to really cut you off there, but I've not played any of the games, but I am familiar in what happens in the story.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll address Gary first, but then Steve, when I go back to you, actually well, it's kind of more graphics and environment and vibe is kind of the thing I want to talk about right here. So Gary, you've played the earlier Half-Life games. I'm just curious because, like, having played those games and then knowing what VR has done to a lot of franchises, what it's capable of, and then thinking about what Valve is capable of, and like, you know, we're here in the year 2020, and this could be the savior of VR and all that. But what do you think about like the world that they delivered, this Half-Life world? Do you feel like it lived up to kind of like your dreams, almost like reading a book and imagining what the movie's going to be like? Or do you feel like they pretty much lived up to it?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the world that they've created a world really based around sort of very similar to Half-Life 2, because it's based in City 17. But the original Half-Life, you see, it's difficult to make a comparison between this and the original Half-Life because you're in sort of like a science facility in that one through, majority of the game. And it didn't really translate. Your base an abandoned city, a decimated city in Half-Life Alyx, and it's a different thing. But I think from what I was saying earlier, like it still feels very much like a Half-Life game, in particular Half-Life 2. I think that's the closest approximation you can make. If you hadn't played Half-Life 2 and went straight from Half-Life 1 and then played Alyx, I think to me they would feel like different games in some ways. But only because of the environments. And I'm talking specifically about the environments and the graphics and that kind of stuff here. Because you've still got the same sort of sounds, the sound effects where you're topping up your health and all these kinds of things. You've got all these familiar sound effects that were in the original game as well. But yeah, overall, did they deliver on it? I absolutely think they did. I think this feels like a completely fully realized world. When you look at the amount of detail, and I'm sure we'll get onto detail a bit later on, but when you look at everything that they're doing within this world, the little bits of detail, the attention to detail expand on Half-Life 2 for me. And I guess that's what I wanted. I didn't know I wanted it, but it makes sense that this game sort of goes deeper into that because it's based in the same place, really.
The one thing that I have kind of missed, though, about Half-Life so far, and I'm just very early in chapter 4, so maybe, I mean, there's 11 chapters. I can't believe it's taken me this long. Like, I'm going so slow, but just taking my time. But the one thing I haven't seen much of to this point that has been a little bit disappointing to me is kind of the whole 1984 oppressive dystopian world, like of Half-Life 2, the whole City 7, like the big giant video billboards. Like maybe those are coming and I just haven't seen them yet, but I haven't, like there is one part where you're outside out here and you do see like a big projection that's on the side of like a giant apartment building and it's like the stormtrooper guys.
I think, yeah, I think with that point, because that's a good point, but I think part of it as well, because this game is set 5 years earlier, they've not quite transitioned to that full. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know exactly, but maybe they've not transitioned to that full.
Whether or not they've transitioned, one of my biggest complaints on the game is that a good chunk of the game is corridors. And it goes back, I think, to what I said earlier when I think they kind of broke the game up into a lot of what's equivalent, these escape the room scenarios. And I don't know if previous Half-Life games kind of played that way or not, but the result was I didn't spend nearly as enough time in City 17 as I spent below it or in a building within City 17. And I wanted to see more of that world. Like they set that tone when you start the game and you're there on that balcony and you're looking out across this whole city and stuff's in the sky and I think they call them vaults or whatever, and you see the Citadel off in the distance and you see the Striders walking all over the place. Like they set that scale and then they take you indoors, and it's like going to a 50,000 person football arena somewhere in your part of the woods, Gary, and then spending all your time at the concession stand or something. Like you're missing a big part of the possibilities, and that's just how I feel. I kind of wanted more of that scope, more of that scale, more big set pieces, and I would say Half-Life Valve didn't deliver in what I would have hoped in that sense. But to be fair, I hold Valve to a higher critique. Like if this was some indie 20-person team publisher making a VR game, I almost wouldn't level the same critique at them as I'm leveling at Valve, because Valve is capable of doing it. They made a great game, but it could have been better, I think, at least for me, if they would have done more of that big stuff rather than putting me in a hallway so damn much.
Yeah, no, I hear exactly what you're talking about here, and it's worrying me just a little bit because, like, so far in this game, it has been mostly indoor and it's kind of dark, and you're dealing with some amazing lighting. We could probably talk about that in just a second, but you are indoors a heck of a lot. And when I did get outside and it was sunny and it kind of seemed like an open area, it was like being let out of jail. And just like seeing the world in this kind of sunlight, occasional sunlight, sometimes kind of overcast kind of environment, but like being outside and having this sense of openness, even though it was probably mostly an illusion because they're kind of tunneling you through. But like there were certain little parts where I almost like got a little Fallout 4 vibe, and it kind of felt a little more open like that.
I was just going to say, though, on that point, I wonder about the amount of detail. This is a company that has limited resources, no matter how big they are. And this, I think they said this was a 80-person team, I think, that developed Half-Life Alyx, which is a huge team, the biggest team by all accounts that Valve have ever done on a single game.
I question their limited resources. The team was limited in how much Gaben was willing to give them, perhaps, but Valve has plenty of resources.
No. I understand that, but so my point is, they've got 80 people working on this, and they do have finite resources within this 80-person team, I would say. But the thing is, by keeping it with relatively enclosed areas, you've got a level of detail in each of these areas that you don't see in a game like Fallout or anything like that. It's not possible with a game like Fallout. It's a huge open world. And at one point yesterday when I was playing Alyx, I was actually thinking, imagine if a game like Fallout, an open world game, could ever be built like this, with this level of detail in every little nook and cranny that you're experiencing. You can't have that level of detail at this moment in time with an 80-person team that Alyx is going for. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages it's got. Detail in this game is one of the high marks for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the detail it's a 2020 game compared to, say, Fallout 4. The detail's probably a little is better in Alyx, and I don't know how far you got and how much time you spent in Fallout, but there was some really detailed stuff in Fallout, and I don't know how big the team at Bethesda or whatever, who the people who make Fallout. I know Bethesda mostly publishes, but I think the detail. I don't know that we should group the detail in with the size of the environments, right? Like I think there is limited resources. I think you're absolutely right, and I think that they did what they could work with, but I think it could have been more open. And it's not a critique against linear, because I like a linear game. I think it's more about set pieces and trying to throw. I mean, just a simple example, like the way you start the game out on the balcony. Like, why not have that somewhere in chapter 3, right? Like something to kind of ebb and flow the pacing a little bit, and something to change up the scenery. It doesn't have to be something that requires tons of explosions and voice acting. Like, what if I went outside and a strider or an explosion happened, right? It's just enough. It took 10 seconds of my time, but it was enough to make me feel more in that world rather than shut off. And I honestly, I would think that maybe they didn't realize it, or if they did realize it, it was too far down the road. But it's a opinion I have, and I felt that it does get better towards the end. So you're not going to be in the same hallways for the whole game. But I know when I was around where you are, Gary, let's call it halfway through the game, I know I was going to Anthony's VR365 Discord, and I was asking the people that had completed the game already, and I was saying, does it stay in these corridors? Does it stay shut off? Because I really like that opening sequence. And so I was feeling it at that point, as really the point that I'm saying. And if I feel it, then I'm sure there are other people that did.
Hey, do you guys want a other tiny little nitpick that I can throw in here that's kind of similar to the doors? This is like just a total off-the-wall thing that I noticed. But in certain parts of this game, everything is so brand new. Like they have these like garbage containers that are like yellow or orange or whatever. And then you have the stormtrooper guys are wearing like these hazmat suits. And there's just a lot of it just some of the stuff just looks so brand new. Like that was the very first day he ever wore that hazmat suit. I mean, it's a really tiny complaint. Gary, what do you want to say about that?
That didn't bother me. I didn't really notice that. One thing I did notice that is weird, when you go into, well, you go into a building and then you've got elevator in there, and you go up to different floors in this building. On the first floor, on the ground floor, you can press the button and go up the elevator, but then you get to other subsequent floors and you can see the elevator there, and they've not got a button on any of these other floors. That was something that I noticed. It's a weird little omission as well. I mean, what a ridiculous thing to even point out, but yeah, that's just something I noticed along those lines.
One thing I always notice too, and you guys must notice this in almost every VR game, you go up to a door, there's no knob or anything. Oh, guess what? That is a hint. You can't do anything with this door. Now move on. It's just like those things are little subconscious notices that let you know you're in a video game. Did you know you're in a video game? Here's a video game. And I was thinking to myself, well, how do you make that better? So if you put a real knob there, and I've got like a virtual glove and I can twist the doorknob and it's like, damn it, it's locked. But then you get into, like, after you've done that 9 times, are you kind of sick of it? Steve, you wanted to say something about that?
Well, I was just saying there are some doors in the game that does have a handle, and you go to touch it and it wiggles. And I can't remember if Alyx says, "Oh, I can't open that door" or something like that. But there are clues. There are some doors that you can't open or you can't open yet. Yeah. Become able to open later. So they I guess they did do that to some degree. But yes, in the parts where you are moving faster through an environment, that is your big clue. Is if it doesn't have a handle, don't even waste your time. Go right by it. And I think that's a problem there. And I'm struggling to recall some of the specifics, but when you have a game that's focused on interactivity, and if it does it well, and I would say Alyx does it well, there's inevitably something that comes to your mind that you go, oh, I wonder if I can do that. And then you realize you can't. And one of the glaring things in Alyx is just melee in general. There is no melee. Like if a crab's coming at you, you can't hit it with the butt of your pistol or anything like that. But there are other environmental things like that. And I think it becomes almost impossible for a developer, making, no matter how resourced they are, to polish and include every possible physical interaction and create a thing that might come to the gamer's mind. So if you accept that, right, like, oh, I can't bludgeon a head crab with a orange traffic cone, right? Like, and if I do, even if they program in that damage, will the damage on the head crab reflect that cone, right? So if you accept that they're never going to make everything perfect in that way, then where do you draw the line, right? Like, do you just go ahead and accept the gameism and just focus on making a good game? Or do you try to make it mimic reality so much that you end up with a hodgepodge of just physics that maybe don't balance and play well together?
Boneworks. I should mention I do like Boneworks, by the way. But yeah, I do like Boneworks, but I think they push the physics too much in the inverse kinematics. But yeah.
Yeah, man, I had a good point, and then Gary said Boneworks, and now I lost it. But yeah, well, no. Oh, to Steve's point, I do think though that, like, you could do everything that Alyx is doing and also have the Saints and Sinners melee built into it as well. But what you would have had to have done is, when you first started building the game, you would have to prototype all those kinds of like human-sized creature interactions and interactions with enemy characters. They could have, like, melee type interactions, they could have baked all that stuff in as well. It would just add a whole nother level of complexity to it, and they just decided not to go down that road. And it's pretty understandable, so we don't get absolutely everything we want with the game.
Yeah, a lot of the argument, because I've mentioned this as well when I've been just thinking about Half-Life Alyx and, like, the limitations of it not having melee. I just think that an argument that has been put forward to combat my opinion of that is that the Valve were trying to again play it safe, I suppose, with the controllers and flailing around controllers in a room and stuff like this. They could, it can cause injuries and this kind of stuff. And people were saying that maybe that's the reason they didn't include melee. And I was just reading actually a comment. Yeah, so VR Gamer for Life did put in chat here, melee would require them to train users not to smash their controllers. So yeah, I can sort of understand it in some respects from that point of view. But to your point, Anthony, I think having Saints and Sinners based melee combat within this game as well would have been absolutely like the cherry on top, really.
But I mean, I played Saints and Sinners for only 45 minutes to an hour, right? So not very long. And I know in Saints and Sinners, even in the beginning tutorial, you get a knife and you can just kind of, and you got to do it with some force, if I remember correctly. You got to kind of shove that knife into their skulls a little bit. Does the melee work in that game if I pick up a random paint can or a random traffic cone or a random cardboard box? Right. So when you open melee up, then the next inherent thing, does the melee only work with a knife? Right. So in Half-Life Alyx, you can pick up so much stuff. Like why can't I stab a head crab with a broken glass bottle? Right. And so I think at the end of the day, there's going to be a locked door no matter what, right? Like, oh, there is melee, but it's only melee under these very specific conditions. And, it may or may not include the paint bucket that's sitting on the floor next to you.
Yeah, I mean, as we continue in this hobby that we're in, that is going to be a constant problem, because the more realistic you make things, the more you notice any little thing that is an imperfection that deviates from the realism. So it's like a self-defeating prophecy. So it's always going to be like this. But the hope is, God, it sucks. It sucks when you're one of these type of people that notice all these little things, because there's people out there that just, oh yeah, this is fun, man. I'm playing. They don't notice any of that stuff, and they get all the immersion and everything. And here I'm noticing like little inconsistencies or something.
On that little point, Anthony, just quickly, I didn't even notice it didn't have melee combat until somebody mentioned it. I would have played through this game quite happily without knowing that. I've just gravitated towards what it's given me, and I didn't notice it at all. But when people bring it up, you start to think, okay, yeah, that is a little bit of an oversight from a VR enthusiast point of view.
Yeah, well, there's some good things about this game that just go towards everything, like the saving. Oh my God, there's no backtracking in this game pretty much, right? This is the exact opposite of the Boneworks original save system. You can save almost anywhere, and it is mission critical, I'll tell you what, because I've been in a number of circumstances in this game. Like I was in one situation in this one area where I basically was just dying over and over and over again. I mistook what I had to do in that sequence and thought I had to do a very specific thing, and I just kept dying out. And then I finally realized, oh, I don't have to do that. I can just run by and avoid that whole area. But I was dying over and over and over again. But the beauty of it is I was able to save right before I started that whole die thing. So it wasn't a lot of wasted time on my part when I was playing the game. So I was immediately able to get right back to that section.
Yep. So I started and it's not a spoiler, but the hologram puzzles to open a capsule or locker or whatever they're called, they increase in difficulty the further along you go in the game, and they kind of got a little bit annoying that I started saving after I complete every hologram, just in case I would go in the next room and die or something. I wouldn't have to redo that hologram puzzle again. So the save feature is very, very nice. And every game, in my mind, every game should do that. If you look at the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, in part because of the SSD technology they're putting in those consoles, they're doing a suspend resume. And it's not like the suspend resume that's on the PlayStation 4 where you can put your PlayStation into rest mode and then come back. You can actually close a game, start playing another game, and then come back to the game you've closed and pick up exactly where you are. So it's almost like a image that they're putting into a snapshot state. But anyways, my point is, I think that is a feature that type of mentality is something that consumers are going to start to demand more, and we're going to demand it more on PC because the PlayStation and Xbox is doing it. And VR is a little bit off to the side in the sense that it doesn't get all of the polish, but when it comes to a game made by somebody like Valve, I think you sort of expect that freedom to save on a dime, or to be able to close your app and pick up exactly where you were without having to replay anything. To me, and someone that has limited time, that's something that I feel like as a consumer, I'm going to start maybe prioritizing with my money.
I think some developers, though, they might actually deliberately avoid that, because think of how long the gameplay times would be if the save system wasn't so super generous. Like, it might add another 2 hours easily to your total play time. And for a game that's only like 3 hours long and they want to be 4 hours long, then they might arbitrarily not give you the best save points. I don't know. But another beautiful thing we can compliment this game for, I believe, is I think this game does ultimately have the best graphics I've seen of any VR game. I know there's other VR games that are pretty darn beautiful and come pretty close, but overall I would say this is the best graphics I've ever seen, from a combination of lighting, textures are good, lighting is good, detail on objects is good. Like this actual scene right there, when you first get to that subway, I think it's one of the more memorable experiences I've ever had in VR, when you're first in that little area right there, because you've got sunlight coming in from different angles on those chairs. It's dark, it's light, and you've got the sounds and everything, and you've got the flashing lights going on. It's really quite amazing.
Yeah, I think as well, its graphics to performance ratio as well with this game, because it performs so well. I'm
It's a term I
astonished.
used.
Is it? Did you use that?
Yeah, I don't know if I did it here on this show, but like because I think it was in Anthony's Discord. I was like, I don't know that it's the absolute hands down best graphics, but without question, it's the best graphics to performance.
I'm not on Anthony's Discord for a while, so that's why it's used. But yeah, I think the point stands though. I think the overall, like, the performance is one of the highlights, another one of the big highlights for me, because one of the things a lot of games that I've looked forward to playing in VR, No Man's Sky being a big example, the one thing that hampers that game more than anything else is the performance issues that you get on that game. Fallout 4 VR is another one as well, and they're both nice looking games, but the performance really doesn't match what you expect within those games, or what you really want in those games. With this, it doesn't just look good, it looks crystal clear, and the performance, I'm dropping no frames. I'm looking at FPS VR and I'm on constant 90 frames per second pretty much constantly.
Yeah, well, because it has dynamic resolution.
Yeah, but I've not even noticed that. I've not even noticed it dropping. That's the way.
You're rocking a 1080 Ti. I would be very curious if you was rocking a 1060 or something like that. Like when you got, into some of the more open areas or the more demanding areas, if you saw the resolution drop down. But either way, your point stands. Like, I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of another game that looks as good and performs as well simultaneously. Yet, and I'll say this, not, memory is one thing, right? But Alyx is very good, and I don't know that, like Anthony was just talking about that subway scene. I remember that scene, but I don't have. You remember kind of early on in VR Roundtable when we were doing our deep dives, and I think you did one on creating memories in VR.
Yeah.
And for some reason, a lot of these scenes in Alyx, as technically perfect as they are, I don't know that I have those feelings of memory when I think of the moments that have caused those impressionable things, and graphics are a component of that. I have memories of Fallout 4. I have memories of Resident Evil. I have memories of Elite Dangerous even, and Alyx, I don't really have any of those memories, and I don't know if it's graphics, right? Like, because it's good, it's right, it's perfect, but what is it that is something isn't giving me that same step of just bringing that world all in? And I don't know how, even in Subnautica, right? Like, it's sort of cartoony, right? I wouldn't call it accurate graphics, but there are moments in that game, and maybe it's more of a of an immersion aspect than it is purely graphics. But there are moments I've had in VR over the years, Blood and Truth even, where I felt so alive and so in those places. And ironically, as good as Alyx is, I don't have like I can't think of any one of those moments throughout all of Alyx that stands out as clear to me as the moments I've had in Elite, one particular moment in Fallout VR, one particular moment in Subnautica, and a couple moments in Resident Evil. Like, I don't know what that is. I mean, I guess it's probably not purely a graphics thing, but I think that's part of it.
Yeah, it probably just depends on the person. Different people just remember different things. I've had some areas in this game that I've been thinking about when I was at work the next day, and I was thinking about being in that very specific room and dealing with those very specific barnacles up on the ceiling there. I've remembered a little bit of that. But yeah, why don't we? I know you guys can't do this forever, and I did want to just briefly touch on a couple of other quick little topics. I wanted to talk about the HP Reverb G2, because this is something that kind of came out of nowhere recently, and a lot of people are really excited about this, and I don't know if I should be excited about it or if it's not going to be that exciting. But basically all we got was this 10-second teaser talking about the next generation, and it shows this new HP Reverb, and it's called the Reverb G2. And at first I didn't remember what the code name was. I thought it could have been Reverb R7 or something like that. But now that I know it's G2, I guess that means generation 2 of Reverb. Going back to the original Reverb, it was 2160 by 2160 per eye, so one of the highest resolution headsets for mainstream consumers out there. A lot of people love it for Sims, Assetto Corsa, Project Cars, flight simulators, and stuff like that. But it had its share of downsides. It had, of course, a tiny sweet spot. Some people would complain that you could actually see the corners, the edges of the screen itself. Some people would also complain that the field of view was actually substantially smaller than what you normally get, like more of a 90 degrees field of view. People complained about how heavy the cord was. There was all these little things there. So it seemed like it might be a good idea for the Reverb to possibly be refreshed. Now we're looking at this image, and it kind of looks like the Valve Index speakers on the side there. I don't know if those are exactly the Valve Index speakers. If they are, that is a hell of a bonus, because I think all of us can agree that if there's one thing the Valve Index did nail, it was the audio solution. That audio solution is fantastic. It's off of your ears. It doesn't warm you up. The audio is very high quality. So if we got that same exact audio on the Reverb, that would be pretty cool. Now, there's a Steam page for this thing. They're working in tandem with Microsoft and with Valve, and we're wondering, how does all of that work out? Initially, you would automatically think about Windows mixed reality, because the Reverb is originally Windows mixed reality. So could this be a hybrid that would use both Windows mixed reality tracking, but maybe also have Steam VR trackers as well? And maybe if you buy it in a bundle, maybe you can order it with Index controllers instead of the Windows mixed reality. I mean, there's just so many damn questions. And then how much is it going to cost? Is it going to have a higher resolution? Why don't I go to Steve first? Did you hear about this Reverb G2? Are you excited about possibly a new HMD? Are you in the market for a new HMD? Basically, what's your thoughts? Next gen VR, is it weeks away, or are we looking at years away?
So yeah, I saw the teaser, and it was the same day as Alyx too, which was interesting. But anyways, the what I think of it, honestly, it's so I've had lots of headsets, and the one thing I've learned is it's all compromise, and that was their slogan here was no compromises. I bet there's going to be a compromise or three, right? Like, so, at this point, we just got to wait and see what it is, if it's reverb, right? So I assume it's going to hold the 2160 by 2160 or be better, right? I don't think they're going to downgrade from reverb G1, if we call that Gen 1. Maybe it does look like it's the index speakers, which is a good solution. That's a good check mark. We have no clue about the tracking and no clue about the underlying platform. Is it mixed reality? Is it Steam VR native? And until we know, it's just all speculation. I don't know that it matters, right? Unless there truly is no compromise. And it's 140-degree horizontal field of view, and it's at least 2160 by 2160, if not higher, and the lenses have no glare, and it has scalable tracking solutions, being with Steam VR, even if it's Windows MR out of the box. If it checks all those boxes and there's no compromises and it doesn't cost $4,000, then great, that's awesome. That'll be the headset we all eventually sell our existing headsets and go buy. But I have a feeling that's not going to be the case, and till that time comes, we'll just have to see what it is.
Yeah, I mean, Gary, the Windows mixed reality angle of this, there's some people that when they saw that, they immediately ran to off to the races with the idea that this is going to be Windows Mixed Reality 2.0. Oh my God, a new solution, brand new controllers, brand new tracking. But we're looking at the front of the thing, and it has the two cameras on the front. We can see that, but we don't know if there's some side cameras as well. So we don't even know what exactly is going on here. Do you believe that?
What if it's an HP Index?
But why is Microsoft's name there?
Well, yeah. I don't know, but like if you look at those cameras, it looks very Index-like, right? And I just, what if it's an HP Index? Does Valve really want to be in the manufacturing business? What if they've partnered with HP to shove off the Index, essentially, right? Like, even if it's not called the Index, what if they shoving that off to HP? And I'm just spitballing. Like, I do not know anything, right?
Yeah. I think the weird thing is with this, because you've got the Microsoft logo there, which is the confusion when you've also been associated with Valve. So what is Valve's angle? Is it the audio? Could they have just said, you can use our audio solution or something like that in this Windows MR headset? This is the thing that's a little bit confusing to me at the moment. And it's got to be Windows Mixed Reality. You've got those two cameras on there, and you would think if it's Windows Mixed Reality 2.0, then you would have extra cameras.
But you have your Index? You have your Index sitting next to you?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, okay.
There's cameras right there in that location.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's a good.
In conjunction with a Microsoft logo, it's got to be mixed reality, hasn't it?
See, when we first heard the story about this, like if you went to the various websites, it said HP is working in collaboration with Microsoft and Valve. And a lot of people are like, oh, they're working together. Yeah, so HP scientists are right next to the Valve scientists, and they're all collaborating. To me, when I saw that, that could be as simple as just straight up licensing something, like licensing Steam VR tracking. But we don't see the Steam VR tracking dimples. However, they can make those things kind of invisible now, so where you might not see that in that image. So this could be a hybrid. Or maybe it has nothing to do with Steam VR from the standpoint that maybe they just licensed the audio and said, hey, Valve, you've got maybe they watched one of my VR365 episodes, because I told everybody out there, dude, steal what they're doing or license it or do something. Get that HP audio, because that is the solution. So if they put the HP audio in there, that could be the licensing from Valve, and this might still have Windows Mixed Reality controllers 1.0, the big gigantic things with lights everywhere that don't work worth a damn. How sad would that be?
Well, one thing with this no compromises
still better than the wands and still better than the PS moves.
The thing about this no compromising is maybe they're just talking about one particular aspect of the headset, because obviously like you said, Steve, there's got to be compromise in almost everything. Main fan put field of view is always a compromise, but what I'm saying is if they've concentrated on this wording of no compromising, simply meaning in tracking, and it could have Windows mixed reality tracking and also Steam VR based tracking, maybe that's the angle that they're coming at this on.
What if the no compromise means it has an IPD slider?
Well, we were going to get
That's
that
something the original Reverb didn't have.
Yeah, there was a concept.
Yeah, so what if they bought off the what if they just bought the concept D OHO and they're just putting HP clamshell around it, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know, and I think the bigger picture, I think a direction we could take here in this conversation is to say, what would it have to do to like really, really, really matter? Like, what would it have to do to get you to sell your index, right? Like, or what could it do, right? And I think that matters more in at least in a theoretical conversation.
Well, Anthony wants 2160 by 2160 per eye, and this could very well have that. So that could be a big thing as well for a lot of people, because like Anthony said earlier, a lot of sim racers, flight simulator people, they want resolution more than tracking, really.
Yeah, I would really like a nice big jump in resolution with whatever the next headset. I understand the GPU problem. That's why I kind of like this idea of 2880 by 2880, because I like the idea of actually sending it the 1440 by 1440 and doubling it to 2880 by 2880. So your pressure on the GPU is not as much, but with that doubling, you probably would completely kill screen door, because I'm in a Valve Index. People say there's no screen door in the Valve Index. No, I see screen door. It's better than it's ever been, but I still see it. And I want to get to a point where screen door is gone.
So people on resolution, yes, more resolution, more GPU required. But what the Pimax community is starting to see with the AKX, that it's not linear. Like right now, all headsets are sort of inherently super sampled. So even though your Valve Index is, was it 1440 by 1600 per eye, whatever it is, right? That's not, if you go into Steam VR at 100%, that's not the resolution it's running at. It's running at a resolution higher than its native. What people are starting to say with the AKX and maybe even to a degree the HP Reverb is that you don't have to have that same super sampling, right? That inherently to do the lens correction, and that you get a better image. And one of the things I'm hearing is that from that people are giving the AKX the same resolution they're given the 5K plus, right? So effectively the same GPU load, but they're getting a much better image and a much better experience out of the AKX. So I think we're assuming that twice the resolution equals twice the load, but in reality, maybe we give it the same resolution. We're still killing SDE, and so long as it's scaling well, there's a benefit to it. And then, of course, you can feed it native, and native does require a ton of GPU assets. But in some games like Pistol Whip, we'll be able to run that native in a HP Reverb or a Pimax AKX. If you're rocking a 1080 Ti or whatever, like a lot of people are in the VR community. So I think the issue of GPU load is starting to be tackled in creative ways that are something in a way that I wouldn't have assumed a year ago. I would have said 4K per eye, not possible. And it isn't going to be possible on Fallout 4 VR because the game's optimized so poorly, but in other cases it is possible.
Yeah, I mean, imagine playing Alyx right now in a Reverb. Just all that stuff would just look a little bit better. But, I mean, the Reverb has a lot of issues, like additional issues that we didn't even get to. Like, it's got this Mura problem where there's, like, these murky areas of the screen. A lot of issues, man. And I am kind of worried because if it is the 2.45-inch square screens that they're going with, the exact same ones in the original Reverb, people mentioned you could see the edges of the screen. And for me, that would be super like just noticing that out of the corner of my eye would like really bother me. And so I'm hoping we get to...
Well, I think that that all gets into the compromises. Like, right, yeah, that's annoying. You prefer not to have that, but is it more of a immersion breaking than the halo glare in the index, right? Like, I know that jumps out. I remember you saying you quit playing Sinners and Saints in your index for that reason, right? So it all goes back to the aspect of compromise. I know in some portions of Half-Life Alyx having an LCD headset, like the blacks weren't as good as I would like. I kind of wouldn't mind playing those areas through an Odyssey or a Vive Pro or something OLED based. And and then that's talking about no compromises. I would be very interested in an HP Reverb G2 if they pulled up a Sony and had a 2160 by 2160 OLED RGB display where you didn't have to, you weren't trading off the subpixel thing, the gain that you get from LCD versus OLED, while also not trading off on the black levels.
Yeah, it's a complicated thing. And then there's the comfort issue as well. These headsets fit everybody differently. It's just and then we got the weirdness of what's going on with our economy. Like, a really good question might be PlayStation 5, Xbox One, whatever they're calling that thing. Are they actually coming out this year? Like, are people actually going to release expensive things this year? There's questions about that. But why don't we move on to another subject real quick? Because I know you guys got to go really soon. We've been going for a while. And I wanted to touch on the Del Mar. So we've heard these rumors of Oculus Del Mar. It's not a rumor. It's like in actual notation for developers. So there's something called Oculus Del Mar. We know it is something. Now, what is it? We don't know that answer to that. It could be a lot of different things. This could be a Quest 2. It could be a new Oculus Go. It could be a Quest 1.5, basically the same thing as the Quest from a hardware standpoint, but with other features or enhancements. It could be it could be a replacement for the Rift S. Maybe this is a new Rift. I don't know if it's Rift 2.0, but maybe it's an improvement on the Rift S. Maybe this was scheduled to come out later this year, and this is just a natural way of things. It could be Oculus's AR headset. We know that they're still working on. They're definitely working on an AR headset. We don't expect it anytime in the very near future, but eventually they have to get the developers on board with that. So lots of possibilities. Why don't I go to Gary first? Gary, Oculus Del Mar. It could be one of like 5-6 different possible options. Which one would be your favorite? Like, what are you hoping for?
Just off the cuff, I'd probably say out of everything, only because the way I see it going is last year they released the Rift S and the Oculus Quest. I think they see the Oculus Quest lasting 3 years minimum for them, and they want to get more and more developers on board, creating games for this, possibly even longer than that. I just don't see, from that point of view, I don't see it being an Oculus Quest or necessarily a Rift S thing. Maybe it is the AR thing. That seems a little bit far-fetched to me as well, but it's entirely possible because we know they're moving in that direction. But the amount of time that's gone past since the Rift S and the Quest have been released just doesn't seem long enough for them to be sending out development kits or things like that for the next one, when I would think they would want the focus of developers to just be on the Quest that is available now. And I'm, maybe I'm wrong about that. I part of me hopes that I am wrong about that, because I would like the next generation of Quest, but maybe that's not a good thing for the industry anyway. They want to keep on one product, the same as consoles. They want to keep it as a console really, and keep it around for a few years, so people aren't constantly looking to the next one that's coming out a year later.
Okay, Gary, real quick before I switch to Steve, what about the fact of the Rift S? It's a Rift S. It's a Rift with an S on it. Maybe this was never meant to be like a long-term thing. Maybe this is just a temporary stopgap measure. They hooked up with Lenovo. They need a little stopgap option to kind of hold people over. Maybe this is maybe not the Rift 2.0 you really, really, really want, but maybe this is much more like a true Rift 1.75 or something. Would that be exciting for you?
No, not really. I just don't think. You see, again, I don't think that Facebook would be going to the two ends of the spectrum that we've got at the moment. You've got the high end, the very high end. You've got the Pimax and the Index. I don't think Facebook have any interest in PC VR of that level of the ultra high end headsets. And the Rift S is sort of a low cost PC headset. They're staying in the game, and I think that's where they want to position themselves. Squarely want to position themselves, which is a great place to be. People buy Rift S's all the time because and they really like their headsets. So there's nothing wrong with the Rift S. This is the thing. I don't see them wanting to replace the Rift S anytime soon. I think it would annoy people if they replaced it in this year or even next year. I think people would get a little bit annoyed and be thinking, well, should I buy this next one? Because maybe in a year or 2 years, they'll be bringing out another one again and like incrementally different. So it's very difficult to have an opinion on this because we don't know enough, honestly, about it.
Yeah, Steve, one idea that I kind of like is an idea of a Quest 1.5. Okay, so you have the argument from a number of people that say, well, why don't we just get a Quest every single year? You know, cell phones, we get cell phones every single year. Why don't we get a new Quest every single year? It'll have a Snapdragon, but that Snapdragon will be backwards compatible, so the software can kind of work together. But my argument is, well, maybe we just go with the Quest 1.5, where the concentration is on comfort, and also the other concentration is on lowering the weight and taking the battery to the back. So a new design that is going to be built around comfort and maybe dropping about 150 grams of weight. I'm not sure exactly how they'll do that, but figure it out, Facebook. And then also adding possibly like a real mini HDMI connector on the side of it, so that when you're doing the PC link, no degradation whatsoever. So you can actually get so it would truly be like almost a replacement for the Rift in a way, with having that true connection on the side. What do you think about a possible Quest 1.5?
It's possible. I think before I answer that, I'll throw one more that I don't know that you're even considering, is what if it's a successor to the Go? Right. And I don't necessarily mean that it has to be 3 DOF. You know, what if it's 6 DOF headset and a simple controller, right? It doesn't have gaming touch controllers, you know, in the box or something. I think Oculus is somewhat of a mess, right? I don't know that I have a ton of stock in their leadership, or they're not giving me the information to accurately assess where they are. Because, you know, they talk about, you know, getting to 1 billion in VR. Okay, we want to get to 1 billion in VR. We want to get to 1 billion in VR. When you look at the PlayStation and the Xbox, those are at best 1 million markets, right? Like the PlayStation 4 is roughly 1 million, right? Maybe 1,010,000, whatever it is, right? It's not a billion. It's not 500 million. And so that's where they want to go, but then they make this gaming console, the Quest, a standalone gaming VR thing, and if that is, they're doing nothing in my mind to get to 1 billion people in VR. They're creating a standalone gaming thing with the Quest, and they did PC VR with the Rift line. So the Go might be finally them going in that direction, saying, look, we know that there are maybe 100-ish million consumers out there that care about high fidelity gaming, right? Let's say we're half wrong. That's instead 250 million people. That's far off from 1 billion. So what are other people that are into electronics and into technology? What are they doing since they're not gaming, right? They're watching Netflix, they're on YouTube, they're you know, on TikTok and doing all this stuff. So what if this Del Mar is a product to kind of go after that market? That, if I were an investor into Oculus, and I kept hearing at every one of these annual financial calls, I kept hearing Zuckerberg talk about 1 million in VR, 1 million in VR. The first thing I'd be saying is, how in the hell are you getting to 1 million in a VR by doing nothing but staying in a gaming market that we know is kind of capped at something less than 1 billion? So maybe that's what this product is for. And I think we've yet to see Oculus really come out and show. They've showed tech. They've shown the what do they call it, the AI avatar things, right? I think you're showing a video of it right now, right? They've shown this kind of stuff, so they've shown little snapshots, but they really haven't shown how they're going to put it in a commercialized package and feed it to us.
I think Facebook Horizon is their path to bridge that gap, honestly, and I think that's why they see the Quest as being a Facebook Horizon player, bridging the gap between people that are interested in gaming or whatever, but you've got all this market that is just interested in social media. They want to be with their friends on Facebook and chatting this way, and they see Facebook Horizon as that transition to get 1 billion. That's really what they're going for, the social aspect, and they're just focusing on gaming because that's where VR is at the moment.
I think the best way.
But do they need? My point is, do they need a Quest? Can they do that with a go-to?
No, I think a go-to is a great idea, because you know what? We've got video gamers and we've got non-video gamers, and there's a lot of non-video gamers that are really into VR just from the future aspect of VR and from the idea of going to these shared social spaces where they can interact with people and just or going to like a little beach to like just meditate or something like that. There's non-gamers that are into VR, and we don't necessarily need to give them advanced Snapdragons and stuff like that. If we can save a lot of money by concentrating on a headset that would be designed for your grandma in a way. It's designed for people that are never going to really game with it, but they might want to be in a situation where they feel like they're in their living room with their grandchild sitting on the sofa, and it looks like their grandchild is sitting on a sofa because it really looks like her mouth is making movements, and we're not there yet. Now we're watching this little system here where they put this guy from CBS This Morning into that contraption there that has 1 billion cameras. So here's the problem. How do you get everybody inside this contraption and film them all perfectly so everybody's going to have these perfect avatars? We have seen stuff, though. There's this other video I got. It's this other company called Spatial, and it's a much simpler process where they actually just have you use like your webcam and you turn your head a couple of different times, and then they create a little floating avatar. And this is like hot stuff. This is in the news because like you go to Engadget, you go to The Verge, you go to Wired. There it is. They're taking a picture of this guy's head, and then boom, that's like his 3D avatar. It's supposed to look kind of similar to that. Whether it's as good as that, I don't know. But I do see a future where once we have body tracking, we have the eye tracking, we have like that Qualcomm XR2 with the 7 cameras. 2 of them are for eye tracking. 1 of them is for like cheekbone and lips. And so when we get to this point where we start seeing people's lips and their eyes are darting around, and like if they happen to go like this, there's perfect hand tracking. There's like skeletal tracking, somehow shooting down and looking at your torso and calculating everything in real time. So it's like, it's got your body. When we get all of that, I think the idea of defy distance actually becomes real. Because if you're telling me that, like my mom, she's in a care center right now, and they're not allowing any visitors because, it's like high alert COVID type thing. I mean, you got to go through all these different things to possibly see her. And because you could possibly be carrying a sickness and not even know it, it's kind of best just to not even go there. But if my mom had a good VR thing that she could just pop onto her head, and it's like my mom's sitting right there and she sees me sitting on the sofa right next to her, and we can have a natural conversation, and it looks pretty close to what I look like. I really do think that is just a ridiculous game changer, and I think it could, that in addition to all the other kinds of experiences where you have like the Wave VR and Alt Space and Big Screen VR. I haven't really been into all this social stuff, and I think, honestly, we're too early for all this social stuff, but I do believe there will be this tipping point we reach where it is going to be a game changer. And then I will be a full-on believer, just like Gaming Science Teacher and the people that are super hyped about it.
I don't know that we're too early, right? Because that's what people are doing with their smartphones and with their tech. I just don't think we've got a solution yet. We don't have something that's working well, that's easy, that the average Joe can just slap something on and get into something without having to have a bachelor's in computer science and all that. I think if we did, right, let's snap our fingers, we have a good solution now. I think socialization is where that's where those billion people are.
Do you ever screw around with have you ever gone into big screen or Outspace or any of this stuff in the longest time? Because people are into that. Like, people are there, they're doing it, but I've made this argument on a number of shows. You're like these little weeble wobble guys, you're these little cartoon things, and to me, like, some people are like, dude, that's Ready Player One. Yeah, you're a weeble wobble, but it's Ready Player One. And I'm like, no, like, why can't I just be on Skype? Like, I got you guys on Skype. I see your face. It's full color resolution. I see the way you're moving around. I see your expressions. Like, what would be, if we're in VR right now, how is that really better? I don't think it's better. Okay, go ahead, Gary.
No, I was just going to say, for the most part, I agree with you, Anthony. But I think the ways that it can be better is interaction. I went into Altspace last night, actually, only very quickly. It was after Rendered Reality, the Coffee and VR show. I went in there just very briefly. I couldn't stay in; it wasn't working. I got booted out. But anyway. The point is, when you're in Altspace or one of those kinds of social things, it is a little bit like, yeah, this is not a great experience, really. You're in there and you're in these spaces and you can communicate with people, where it does have one value that you can't really replicate on something like Skype. It's just in like those tangible interactions with people within the same room. And there's not a great deal of that. Oh, this is probably close to Steve's point. There's not a great deal. There's not a solution for that really at the moment. You can do things. I'm not saying you can't. But the things that you can do are not really that compelling. But once you've got a level of interaction with all these people in the same room, and it really is like being in the same room, then it probably will have a bigger impact. And to Steve's point as well, like I think technologically we're too early. That's really what my opinion is. This is probably going back to the friction thing. Let's get on to friction. Why not? Because I think, to get 1 billion people in, or to even sway the pendulum in that direction, you need it to be the fact that these 1 billion people are going to want to be compelled to put on a headset which is straightforward, it's easy, it's lightweight, it doesn't really interfere with their day-to-day life of their family that are actually in the same room. That's going to be the tipping point. And technologically, we're just not there yet for it to be like that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely hear you. Let's see here. I screwed up.
And that's why I question, should Oculus be worried about 1 billion people in VR? Is that even obtainable, or will that obscure what they're actually capable of?
It depends what time frame they're putting on that, because they could aim for that in 50 years and maybe they'll get there then, who knows.
Yeah, the problem is, remember, they had a 10-year plan, and that 10-year plan,
is that what they said?
Originally.
We're halfway there, right? Like we're at the midway point.
Yeah. And
it's largely the same. Yeah, resolution's better, tracking's better, but it looks more like Gen 1, it looks more like 2016 than it's looking like what we think it's going to be, or what the goal is, 5-6 years from now on that 10-year plan.
Okay, well, why don't we do this? We're pretty much done here, but I thought one last question I could pose to you guys is I'll go to Gary first, and I'll say, Gary, as you're looking forward to like the remainder of this year, is there some big games you're looking for? Like what would excite you in the VR market? Maybe a game or maybe a new piece of hardware later this year? Or are you pretty much content to just the hardware you have and just playing games that come your way?
At the moment, yeah, I'm just content with what I've got at the moment, and just hoping some games come out. I don't really know what else there is to be excited for, honestly, that's coming up in the next few months. I've not really looked into that too much, but I watch all the VR podcasts and I keep up to date with all of that stuff, so I'm sure that they'll inform me when a decent game comes out anyway.
I mean, there's big games coming out, like what do you call it, Lone Echo 2 is still out there, Medal of Honor is still out there, so I mean there's some big games coming. But the funny thing is you probably got a ton on your backlog already, right? You probably could survive for a while without a big game.
Yeah, got Stormland, Asgard's Wrath. In fact, a few people in chat earlier were saying that they rate Asgard's Wrath higher than Alyx. So yeah, maybe I'll jump into that at some point as well.
Okay, and Steve, why don't I give the same question to you? Going for the rest of the remainder of this year, is there any hardware you're maybe excited about, or a game you're excited about, or will you just kind of like go with the flow and just bide your time until something super interesting happens?
There's nothing hardware wise. Like when the Pimax 8KX is readily available, I may look at what's going to take to sell my 5K and buy one and see what the step up cost is, because I do want the highest fidelity when I am going through all that friction and getting inside VR. I want it to be the highest fidelity that it can be. So hardware, I'm kind of always just kind of pulsing it, but there's nothing like I'm jonesing for. Like, oh man, like if that next release just comes out, right? Like I'm not at that point anymore. Game wise, I am actually I spent some time digging back into Skyrim VR, kind of going through that old mod list that I have and applying some new mods and taking some old mods away and stuff. So I think one of the things is when we did VR Roundtable, we took a break 1 year, and that's really when I did Fallout 4 VR, and needed that break in order to really do Fallout 4 VR. So I kind of need the same thing. And yeah, we can say we haven't done VR Roundtable since October. You should be well into Skyrim, but I got into other things. So now that I'm on the other side of Alyx, I think Skyrim's going to be my bread and butter probably for between that and Elite Dangerous. There's a big Elite Dangerous update coming in a couple months. I think that's going to occupy most of my time, with the occasional dabble into something like Pistol Whip or Beat Saber, and any small stuff that comes out. But I'm not. I'm interested in Lone Echo 2 because I like Lone Echo 1. Medal of Honor, I don't know. Like that didn't look good when they showed it to me. It might look better and it might play better once it's out. But other than that, I'm kind of in Gary's initial response in that I don't feel like that there's a lot on the horizon, right? And I think this is a very pivotal time because Lone Echo 2 was announced a year and a half ago. It's been a minute, right? So Medal of Honor, we knew that Respawn was working on a game for a long time, and then last year they announced it was Medal of Honor, right? I don't know of what is kind of like big titles that are kind of in that unannounced, untitled state, right? That's in the works. So hopefully in the next 6-ish months, we start getting that trickle of what's going to come and hit in 2021, 2022. And so far, because, I guess part of my concern is that the well starts to dry up a little bit. And we've had Alyx, Alyx was like, well, once Alyx comes, right? Well, now it's come and gone, right? So what is next that even sniffs like Alyx does?
Nothing. but no, what I was going to say is, one thing that we didn't consider too is if you go to Best Buy right now and you want to buy a Quest or a Rift S, good luck. You know what I mean? Like you can't buy these headsets anywhere. You can't buy a Rift S anywhere. And so wait a minute. I'm just saying if you
I'll say that's a go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying that if you're Oculus and you can't buy a Rift S anywhere, why would they release Lone Echo 2? Because wouldn't they want to release Lone Echo 2 when there's like a giant amount of Rift S's available, so they can kind of like, we're hyping Lone Echo 2, buy a Rift S, Lone Echo 2 is brand new. Same thing kind of with Medal of Honor as well. So maybe maybe we haven't gotten a lot of announcements because Oculus is kind of like, well, damn, we have nothing to sell. I mean, yeah, the games will sell to the existing base, but we really want to sell a bunch of new hardware to a bunch of new people as well.
Well, see, I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure I agree because Lone Echo doesn't mean anything to someone that isn't already in VR, right? Like you grab the average gamer across the street and say, "Hey, Lone Echo 2's out tomorrow." He's gonna look at you like you're crazy. Like, what the hell is that, right? So it only means something. Like Half-Life Alyx meant something to all those people. Vader, Immortal, right? Star Wars meant something to all those people that are sitting outside of VR. Lone Echo, I don't think means squat to anyone outside of VR. It's awesome for all of us. And Lone Echo 2, like if someone buys a Quest 3 years from now or whatever, or a Rift 3 years from now, Lone Echo 2 is going to be sitting there waiting on them. So I wanted to go back to the availability of headsets, and coronavirus is going to get the blame. And I just want to remind everyone that headset availability was already bad long before coronavirus was a problem, right? The indexes were in short supply. Quest was in short supply. So they already had a supply chain problem. I don't know that right now, the limited stock, I don't know that it's not a function of the supply chain issues they were having prior to coronavirus.
It is, but
right?
it's Corona on top.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is I think Corona is going to have a lag effect, right? I think we're going to be really feeling Corona in July or something like that, right? So I think this year could be scarce on electronics. I think it is going to impact. I think PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, Elemental P, QRS, I think that is going to still launch this year. But I think if you want anything, go and pre-order it. I don't care if it's the new NVIDIA cards that seem to be on the somewhat relative horizon, if it's a new console, if it's a VR headset. If you can go in and prepay and pre-order and you want it, I think we're going to run into supply chain for electronics through a good portion of this year.
Hey, Steve, Engineered AF says, "Who's the guy with the hat? Everything he says makes sense." Is that you, Steve? But
it's not me. Of course, I am an engineer, but engineered as F. I like it. It's not me. I promise, it's not me.
Yeah, no, the shortages of everything is crazy. And then one last question for Reckoner VR before we bounce out of here regarding the Corona thing. What about the development aspect of it? Because if you think of everybody's job, okay, so you got Cloudhead Games, or you got Ready at Dawn. Ready at Dawn, they're working on Lone Echo 2. You got Respawn Entertainment, they're working on Medal of Honor. You've got Zulubu Studios working on Vertigo 2. Cyan Incorporated working on Firmament. Whatever these big games that might be coming later, like Until They Fall, Vertigo games working on that. But these developers, like, they probably used to be in one location sitting very close to each other. And with all this drama that's going on, I imagine most of them have to go back to their own house, and they're trying to do remote work. And I know everybody's going to try to do their best as far as the remote work is concerned, but isn't everything going to be delayed like 2 or 3 months additional? Like, for example, if Medal of Honor was set to come, like, let's say September, now it's probably coming December, right? Or am I wrong to say this type of thing?
I think it's got to have an effect on just changing the way you work. A moment's notice is going to have an effect on any kind of development, I would imagine. And in fact, there was a tweet put out by Anna Ribeiro from the Pixel Rip team, Pixel Rip 1995. She put out a tweet saying that they can't do the QA for their game in the usual way that they usually would, with everybody out of the office. So they wanted people to try it and this kind of stuff. So it's obviously having an effect on some developers. And everybody's working from home, and I'm sure they do what they can. But I think just remote working is going to be a little bit difficult. And I believe, I'm just trying to find the news story actually, but I don't think I will. But I think there was a news story on one of the big websites that was saying that games will be delayed because of this, because of the remote development. So I think we could take it as read that there probably will be some kind of delays. Although I don't know exactly when any of these games were due to come out anyway, so it won't really affect me too much. Like Medal of Honor, I don't know if that had a release date at all.
No, it didn't. But something like, say, Iron Man VR, right? So Camouflage is working on Iron Man VR. It had a release date of May 15th a long time ago. But these games, like, they have to go through certification and stuff, and sometimes that's a process. Like the developers of Gorn, they're trying to get Gorn on PlayStation VR, but they're having a hell of a time, the game going through cert, something gets denied, then they have to rework it, then it has to go back through cert. But what if, like, all those people at Sony that do the cert process, they've all been sent home or something? I mean, I just think there's going to be a hell of a lot of delays, and I don't know that
there is, and a lot in the software space can be done remotely, and some will even argue it can be done more efficiently because people have more time. It's time that they're not spent in a car driving, 30 minutes or however long a commute is. However, I think there are some functions like QA that may be impacted, but also I think we're going to see companies tighten their belt. Like most corporations and large companies out there, they don't know what the coronavirus impact is going to be to them yet, right? So in hindsight, they're starting to tighten their belts, even though they may not lose anything, right? Their business may stay good and healthy, but they don't know, and because they don't know, they're starting to already pull back on their financial plans, on their capital allocations and such. And I think we're going to see that, right? So even a healthy industry is going to slow down because of the unknown aspect of it. So yeah, it's going to hit in software development. It's going to hit in hardware. It's going to hit us for the rest of the year. And maybe longer. I would anticipate, but I don't think it's going to come to a stop, because conversely, we can always argue that the longer people are at home, the more digital consumption they take,
Exactly,
right? Like, so
yeah.
places like Netflix are probably seeing a surge in subscriptions. I would anticipate, places they like the game stores, like the Oculus store, the Steam, PlayStation store, they may actually be seeing a rise in digital purchases, but A, because people are home and they have more time to play, and B, because they're not going to the store and buying any disc for the PlayStation side. Hopefully I'll say is that hopefully it's not bad, right? It's not too
yeah,
bad.
actually, one really good way we can spin this whole entire thing is, I really feared for all the smaller indie VR companies when we had like Asgard's, Boneworks, you know what I mean? Like Saints and Sinners, Alyx, these big bangers constantly coming. I was thinking to myself, man, all the little games are just going to be completely ignored, and those companies are just done for. But now we might have a slowing down that's going to happen, and maybe some of those smaller teams that were already working in mom's garage, as a 3-man team, they're going to be able to meet their deadlines and get their smaller VR games out there, and then there's going to still be a demand. So that might be one positive way to spin it. But anyway, guys, we've been going for a super long time, and I gotta say, I super appreciate Gary and Steve coming on the show today. This was kind of a last minute thing. I was just thinking, I was like, I've been playing a lot of Half-Life Alyx. I bet Gary's probably been playing it as well. And then, hey, Steve, maybe he can come on as well. We were able to do it. Unfortunately, we didn't get Chris. That would have been even better to have the full Roundtable crew. But this was fun. It was a good talk. Enjoyed it. And Gary, definitely understand what's going on in your situation. I hope things will work out better for you. And man, I just hope we can get our economy back in the mix in not too long, and things will look up there. Any last words, Gary?
No, not really. No, we'll get through it. It's difficult for everyone, so we'll all get through it in the end. But yeah, I mean, while I'm not working, I'll be playing a little bit of VR and doing some other things that I don't usually get time for. So yeah, there's silver linings to all of this stuff as well.
Yeah,
So.
and if there's any developers out there, I'm not sure if you'd be willing to do this, Gary, but in terms of like doing a little bit of consultation on VR gaming, maybe some side work, they could probably hit us up at vrroundtable@gmail.com and maybe get a hold of you that way, if you because there are developers that sometimes are looking for people to give them a feeling about a game, and maybe that's something you could do a little bit of. Steve, what about you? Any last words as we sign off here? Because I'm not sure when we'll be back. Maybe the next big giant event that happens in VR.
Yeah, no, it was good to come on. You timed it, or I mean, I guess it was just the way the cards fell. But having completed Alyx and it being fresh in my mind and everything, I was sort of eager to talk about it. So it worked out well, and it's good to chat from time to time. You know, I like having the time back that I lost with VR Roundtable, but you know, we always said it was a downside of losing the talking aspect, the just being able to engage in this stuff. So it's good to dabble back in that again.
Yeah, this was fun, man. It's 1:30, but I'm telling you, it seems like the time just flew by. Like I feel like I could go for another hour.
It did. It does not feel like 2 hours.
It's crazy. All right, well, that'll pretty much do it for this episode of VR Roundtable. That was on VR365 on Twitch, eventually on YouTube. And we'll see everybody. I will be back Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific on YouTube. So check me out then. I'm going to be jumping back into some Half-Life Alyx. And you guys play some Paper Beast, man. When you get a chance, seriously, try a little Paper Beast. It is a slow burn, but I think it's well worth your time. But that'll go ahead and do it. We'll see everybody later. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.